Resources and Budget Committee. I'll have Luke close the door.
Oh, yes, please. Lordy. May I introduce?
545. Wait a minute. This is Ken. One second. On it. Representative, would you like to introduce our new guest?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if you've met Representative Dennis Miller from. And he's in substituting for Representative Alcala today. So thank you.
Good trade. No, just kidding. Just kidding. Just kidding.
I had a visit with Secretary Lovelace, and he has some information if we would allow it on the transportation questions that you have.
I'm fine. We're all good on that.
Okay.
Yep, we're good.
Okay, good. Well, I'll find out later what he had to say.
He did a great job.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So for their ask for FTEs, I'm wanting to earmark or re-earmark them. Three that were assigned to environmental services, and move them to the shooting program. So they'll have enough people at the gun ranges now to have a person at each range to maybe get them up and moving a little bit. So, any other discussion?
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. Are we on FY20? What budget are we on? 24.
We're on Wildlife and Parks budget.
No, I mean 24. What year are we on? Where are we
both
at?
24 and 25.
For both years.
Yeah. That will let them, or kind of let us kind of help them designate the same number of FTEs. They're just going to earmark them to the three shooting ranges they're trying to develop. Representative.
Would you just say where that is in the budget so I can follow along on paper?
I have no idea.
You have no idea? Oh, Lucas.
Luke, help us on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do believe that would be on page 9 of the budget analysis under item 6. If I'm understanding, Mr. Chair, you said 3 FTE positions? Yeah, so that would that would actually be in the ecological services program. So taking then 3 FTEs from that and repurposing them for shooting ranges.
Where's ecological services?
Mr. Chair, Representative, again, that is on page 9. Page 9, item number 6. The agency had requested 6 FTE positions increase. That's 1 for administration, 4 for ecological services, and 1 for the parks program. So my understanding of the amendment would be to move 3 of those from ecological services and shifting those to shooting ranges.
I don't have any idea what that does to the program, but if anyone could explain that, I'd appreciate it.
Would you like someone to come up and
Yeah.
explain that?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Would somebody from Wildlife and Parks like to help explain that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of this committee. I'm Linda Lannerman, Director of Kansas State Parks. I oversee 3 of those shooting. Did I get it? There you go. I oversee 3 of those in our state parks. Fancy Creek is up by Tuttle Creek. The other one is at El Dorado State Park and Hillsdale State Park. Those will be grant funded match positions, so it'll be fine to do that. Thanks for asking.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I have one more on page 12. Number 1. Remove number 1 for 24 and 25 on the purchase of the Jewell County property.
Did you say remove?
Mm-hmm.
Second.
Okay, got a second. Discussion? Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we've talked about this in the past and we kind of went over it quickly yesterday. And is there a particular reason that we would remove that?
One time we discussed this in approach last year, and the comment was then for the money that is spent for the acreage involved, they could take that money and probably maybe quadruple it in walking hunting to give far more places for people to hunt.
Is that something we can do? I mean, that's not your motion. Is that your motion?
Motion's just to remove number 1 from the budget. You asked the question to me was why was
What was the purpose? And okay.
Representative.
Mr. Chair, by removing that, do we then put in jeopardy the federal funds that we would have received as a match for that? Or are we still able to somehow capture those federal dollars? I hate to lose any federal funding, but I don't.
If we put
Jeff,
that off
wait,
to,
let me ask. Can I ask Luke? Luke, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. In order for the department to purchase any land, there would need to be a bill for the legislature to approve. So that is to say that even if the money isn't in the budget, they would not be able to spend it or purchase the property without the legislature giving them the authority to purchase the land. And to my knowledge, there's not been a bill introduced this session either. So to delete the money would just simply be that the agency cannot, again, without the authority from the legislature to purchase, cannot purchase land.
okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. But while we're asking, I thought Representative's question had something to do with matching grants or money as well.
Mr. Chair, Representative, my understanding would be that sans or without that 200,000 general fund, the agency would not be able to leverage any federal dollars. However, again, with that being said, they would still need to have the statutory authority to purchase the land. But without the 200,000 SGF, it is my understanding that they would not be able to leverage those federal dollars.
I might. So if they would do that in the future, that would still be an option. I mean, they would still be able to get matching funds if this all went through the bill process and everything. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Garber.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So there's a certain amount of land that they can purchase without going through the legislature. How many acres is that? How much?
160 or less.
160 or less? How much is this?
264.
Okay, thank you.
So we have a motion and any more discussion? There's been a motion and a second. Those in favor of removing item 1 on page 12, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes do have it. So back on the budget, does anyone have any other discussions to make at this budget before we pass it out? Representative Jacobs.
Thank you, sir. This may not pertain to the actual verbiage or mention in the budget, but I'd like to address, before I make my decision on the budget, I'd like to address the agency, if that may be all right.
It's fine with me.
Thank you, sir. I had a gentleman come up to me actually just before this, when I was speaking to him outside, and that's why I was late. He had a request of the agency, and I don't know if this would be that you guys could actually do it, or if we would have to present legislation. But long story short, the Wednesday before Thanksgiving for opening deer season, his logic was, or his conversation, most of the time all the families are in town at that particular season, and to be able to open that time up to take advantage of families being together to celebrate Thanksgiving. Have you guys ever entertained anything like that, or can we address
We
that?
have had discussions, and so they would like to preserve that for family or some special use, because, right? So ordinarily, we open up our rifle deer season the Wednesday after Thanksgiving. You're saying if we moved it earlier, that would help those families. So I'll just tell you our logic. We'd be glad to talk about that, but I'll tell you our logic up to now. One of the differences between us and a lot of other states that don't have really high quality deer herds is they hunt during the rut, which is the peak of rut is typically mid-November here in Kansas. Sometimes it slides a little later, sometimes earlier. But by avoiding that in the rifle season, we preserve a lot of those deer to where the bow hunters can come, and they do come to go after those, but they're mostly out of rut. So those males are a lot smarter, thinking straight after the rut's over, and so more difficult to hunt. States that have hunts, and some still do, but they do not have great deer herds because so many are taken during that rifle season. So that's what we're weighing. Every day we move it closer to the rut, puts those big deer a little more at risk. So, but we'd be glad to have that conversation. We've talked some about it in the past, but be glad to continue that with you.
I know that. I mean, if it was a great world, I would have you guys pay for my wife's deer accident, but that's not how that's going to happen, because the buck was in rut and he was beating up my wife's car as she was putt. But anyway, but no, I was just asking because that was presented to me, and I've thought that many times, because with my children being gone now, that we used to do target practice during that time, or line up our rifles, sight in our rifles during that time, and just to have that tradition. So
It's a great point. A lot of families hunt birds, right, that are in then, but yeah, a fair question. We'd be glad to discuss it with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, my birthday's November 20th, and isn't that pheasant season, or it used to
Yes.
be? So is that one of the reasons? I've always thought it was because you didn't want guns out everywhere. I mean, I don't know.
It's really to manage the herd properly, to avoid so many of them being taken when they're just foolish, just out standing in the middle of fields. And that is an important component of a high quality deer herd, is to avoid rifle hunting during the rut.
Oh, because it's of the season. Okay. All right.
You thought it was your birthday, didn't
I
you?
thought it was because they didn't want to have both kinds of hunting going on at the same time.
Well, they do overlap once that rifle season comes in, and that is a safety factor. You're right, but that's why we have our upland hunters wear orange, and the deer hunters have to wear orange that time of year. Yeah.
Except on Fort Riley during bow hunting season.
Committee, any more discussion? Yes, sir.
No.
Mr. Miller, or Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This came up to me last year by 2 or 3 people that live in my district, and they are very opposed to moving it into the rut season, just for that reason, because they wanted the high quality deer later on. And I thought that we had, in another committee, not this committee, another committee, that they had basically threw the bill out that was going to move it forward. Is that a correct statement?
Comes up occasionally, and usually that's where our logic leads us collectively to that point.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. We're back on the budget. Any, yes, sir, Representative Garber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We got to take, we got plenty of time. So when is bow season?
Bow season starts, I believe, early October. Let's see, maybe. We're looking it up right now. Yeah, it starts way earlier. We have our youth, our disabled seasons, muzzleloader all start earlier, and bow season goes a long time because it's so popular.
I
And
think it's October 1st through
that's
even
what I was
hunt. They
thinking.
can even hunt through rifle season,
Right.
even into the doe season in January. So
Yeah. Yeah,
they've got a long time.
so it's a long season, but they prefer that as warm months, right? It's hard to sit still for that long. So early, they get an advantage. And we have a lot of non-residents that come in to chase our trophies in.
So Representative, you need to tell your constituent to be a bow hunter.
And I'll tell you, now that we've allowed crossbows, it's a lot like shooting a rifle in some ways. So that's really expanded people's ability to get trophy deer during that bow season even.
We're back on the budget.
if I may make one more comment.
Representative?
Story time, if that's all right, at the library.
Okay.
Years and years and years and years ago, I used to bow hunt just with a recurve, and then one day I took my wife to Cabela's during Mother's Day and bought myself a compound, and it was like when I first let that release, it was like smokes. I've been missing out for a long time.
Very different.
Anyway, but thanks, sir.
I'm right with you. Yep.
Representative Mosier?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This comment is addressed to Representative from Fort Scott. You took her to Cabela's on Mother's Day and bought yourself a compound bow. Just clarification, please.
A recurve, but she could have shared it if she wanted to.
We need to learn his secret, I think.
Okay. Anybody else going to Cabela's? No. We're back on the wildlife and parks budget. Any more discussion? Last chance. You want to make a motion to pass the,
I think I'll just call the question.
okay.
I think we've already.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
Wait.
we have amendments.
Wait a minute, go ahead.
We had we did. You weren't here.
Oh, what, wait a
But
minute.
we do have amendments. So I do need, someone needs to make.
I've got to take just a moment. What you need?
What would you want me to do? Make an amendment to.
Like he said for the Wednesday before, for their season,
But I did.
just like he said. we're back on the budget.
Okay. You have a point?
Yes.
Be an amendment to open the season up the day, week of Thanksgiving,
Wednesday before.
the Wednesday before Thanksgiving
For rough fire.
for firearms.
Now we've talked about that. You need a second. The amendment is you open up firearm season 1 week earlier, the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. So if you got family people in, they can hunt deer over Thanksgiving.
Mr. Chair?
Second?
No,
Yes,
I
Representative.
guess there's no discussion until there's a second. So,
Well, there's always discussion. Okay.
there's no second, so I guess it dies.
There's a second. There's a second. Now discussion.
Well, we had a good discussion of that very point. I think that was happening when you came in. And we had a good explanation from the secretary about why they don't do it during rut season. And so, but he's willing to talk about it. So I guess that's up to us. But it seemed reasonable to me that they've got it at the right season because it preserves the quality of the herd. That's what we were told. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion? Luke, what do we have to do here?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just ask for a point of clarification. This would be, since the upcoming rifle season for this year would occur in FY 2025, the motion would be just for fiscal year 2025. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. That was my question.
Still good with the second? Representative, this will be like for next year. Okay. Any more discussion, Representative?
Sorry. Did you say for this year or next year?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, this would be, it would be for the 2024, 2024 hunting season, which would occur though in fiscal year 2025.
Point of order. So when we get to November, if this amendment passes, can they hunt this year? If this passes, could they hunt this year on a week before? Or is it next year season?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, yes, it's the, the fiscal year 2025 will start July 1st, 2024. So by the time we get to November of 2024, that would be in fiscal year 2025. So it would be in effect for the fall rifle season.
Just a minute. Are you still thinking? Okay. Well, you would like to let her speak first while you're thinking? Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is to the secretary again. I don't know what kind of rules you have and licenses you have and whether you can do that in this November of 25. Is it doable? I don't know what you're obligated for with the public.
So we're about to do the draw this April for next fall. We would have to put those in the regulations, which you have to go through a process even when it's in statute. We still have to go through that. So I can't tell you. I could find out pretty quickly just how fast we could do all that. But of course, the critical thing is that we print it and let everybody know so they can follow the rules.
So just a point of order here. If this amendment was tweaked just a little bit, so we get out of fiscal year and calendar year, we could, if this would be agreeable, you could put in the calendar year of 25, and then we're in it. Then it's
a year out.
You're a year out. That would give you a year. If this passes, that'd give you a year to get the word out. Yeah. Okay. It's not there yet, but go ahead.
That was my logic because I did. Again, that's what I was conversing with Luke for full transparency because I didn't really know how crunch time that would be. I just didn't know for the agency. So and
So, yeah. Representative Curtis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll go ahead and make a few comments. I'm really not for this because I think we need to give our professionals the ability to manage the herd. And the other point I would make is that Thanksgiving falls at a different time every year. Now, this year it may work out fine because it's late. Thanksgiving is not until November 28th. So you may well be able to start deer season before Thanksgiving and still miss the rutting season. Is that right? And still miss that because of where Thanksgiving falls. But if we tie them, and so if we could give them the flexibility to say that maybe it's not always that you begin it the week before Thanksgiving, but maybe it's more about missing that rutting season, because then some years it could be before Thanksgiving. But when Thanksgiving falls early in the year, we don't want to, damage their ability to manage the herd, which is going to hurt us long term. And I really am outside of my total knowledge of anything, but just looking at what we're talking about from a total outsider's perspective, um, those are my comments and what kind of comes to mind.
Representative.
I'm not a biologist, but I might have hunted a deer before. Most of the time during deer season, even in rifle season, you still have residual of bucks on point or in the rut. So, and it's hard to tell because the does will go out of cycle. I mean, many times bucks are, and again, I can be corrected. I don't know everything about everything, and I've never fell out of a tree before. So
Good.
You're still young.
But anyway, it takes a while for the bucks to I guess we'll just use simple terms, to simmer down. So that we would have a real short deer season, I guess, if we put it that way. But I do understand.
That's what we're basically saying. It's not like it's 7 a.m. on Wednesday the 13th. Something happens.
Exactly right.
We're just talking about allowing. We're talking about allowing people who are coming here with family or whatever to maybe go deer hunting 4 or 5 days earlier. That's where you're at, and yes, sir.
To the representative's comment about timing, the one thing that I know, the first comment our biologist would make is we know, within a day or two when that peak's going to be. But to the representative's point, some deer, start a little later and some start earlier and all that stuff. But we know when that peak typically is. And if there was a year where Thanksgiving fell early and we went the Wednesday before, we could potentially be right in the heat of the heat. And that's when, and you all know who observe deer, you know how they behave when they're in the rut. They are very vulnerable. And I can make a list of the states that say, I wish we would have never allowed rifle hunting in the rut, and now they can't get it back. It's part of their tradition and they can't. And so huge deer are taken by rifle hunters as opposed to extending that, really spreading those deer over the whole season. So that's my caution. So one option is for us to have a conversation about this. And that's what we do every year when it comes to these kind of things. And we'd be glad to have a conversation and talk about, if we were to compromise, what would that look like to that, if you'd like. Thank you.
Back on the amendment. Representative Cyrus.
Can I ask just a question off the amendment, basically speaking, because the conversation was accidents that roughly how many accidents a year are there in fatalities now? They used to publish that. So could you give me an idea, maybe answer the representative's question?
Yeah, I apologize. I don't have that handy. We do keep track, work with Highway Patrol. And of course, that's when we consider the harvest, that's part of one of the things we factor in that. And of course, that's why we are constantly working to try to take more does out of the population, because that's really how you control it, not these big bucks we're talking about. So, but I can get you those data for each year, and that's what we fight with to try to get those numbers lower. Thank you.
Could you do that for me? Because that's the question everybody asks me.
Yeah.
We've had, you work for us.
Yeah, I'd be glad to.
Well, I've got over 20 now.
And I'll send those to the whole committee.
Send them to Josh. He'll kick them out for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Back on the amendment. Question? Representative Garber.
This is for the vice chair. How about if we make a substitute motion to start it the day after Thanksgiving instead of the day before? That would give them that weekend after Thanksgiving.
That's a good compromise.
You be all right with that? I'll make a substitute motion that we start it the day after Thanksgiving rather than the day before. Or was it a week before? Is it day before, right? Yeah.
I'll second your amendment. Discussion. Those in favor of Representative Garber's amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No,
It sounds like the ayes have it.
of course.
Back on the budget. So
That
go ahead.
we pass the wildlife and parks budget out as amended favorably for passage.
Second.
One second.
Yes, sir.
Point of clarification, is that for both fiscal years 2024 and 2025?
Good catch, Luke. You got to watch them. So those in favor of passing out wildlife and parks budget for 24 and 25 as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
All right.
Go get ready for mushroom season. Is right. Oh, heads up for you're good. Heads up for tomorrow. If you can't be here, you might tell someone. So we'll try to find somebody, but I expect this room to be full.
1:30.
1:30.
1:30 tomorrow.
I'm sorry. It's anyway.
Us and about 1,000 other people.
We got anything you need to talk about? Okay. Meeting adjourned.